Hello, everyone. Waiting for some more people to join. We see it still climbing up pretty good, the participant level. As an FYI, Jim, who is supposed to join us, is having some technical difficulties right now. So that's the benefit of having two people do this. If one's having technical difficulties, the other one can pick it up. So we're just going to give it a couple more, or maybe a minute more, because I still see a lot of participants trickling in. And thanks for joining us. We will be doing question and answer. So if you have questions, feel free to use the Q&A feature on Zoom and type out a question. I'll periodically look over at those to see if there's something relevant about the information that I'm discussing at that time. Otherwise, kind of towards the end, I will scan over them and try to answer all your questions. Okay. Well, if you're just tuning in, Jim Goodrich, who's supposed to be with us, that's my father. I'm Glenn Goodrich. Jim is having some technical difficulties with his microphone. So I'm going to be going at it alone right now, and we'll see if Jim can get it sorted out and can join us later. So my name is Glenn Goodrich. I have a company called PropertyTax.io, and we help people produce evidence for their online protest. And we partner with real estate agents because we know that real estate agents are a big node of influence around this time of year. People are saying, hey, can you help me? Okay. Sorry, I was being distracted because I was looking at the question and the answer. Usually we have somebody else handling that. So again, I apologize if I'm not going to be answering your question right away, because I want to get through my material and then I'll circle back and look at those. So we do partner with real estate agents because we know that you guys are a big node of influence for homeowners right now. They say, can you run me some comps? And you guys are also very busy during this time of year because that's when you're listing homes to sell, and it's kind of a hot market. And there's also some nuances with the appraisal district systems that just don't even really, people that are experienced at valuing real estate don't even really know about. Like if my father were on, Jim were on, he's a real estate appraiser, really well known in the area. And, even he doesn't fully understand how they do certain things. There's considerations that and how they value property that don't exist in the MLS systems. So there's data points that don't exist there. So really what my company specializes in is kind of tying that all together. And I'll kind of get into more details on that later, but I'm going to kind of start my presentation and just kind of talk about what's going on with property tax in general right now. So a lot of you are probably kind of wondering what's, a lot of questions that we get on my website, PropertyTax.io, we have like a live chat feature. A lot of people are asking about how COVID is going to impact the appraisal district's valuation. And, that's a tricky question because this is one of those things that's kind of unique with appraisal districts, how they value property is they're valuing the property as of January 1st of 2020. So I have kind of two boxes on this graph. One is this big green box that has the appraisal district listed on the left, and the other is this big red box on the bottom that has taxpayers listed down here. And what this is this is tracking the Dow Industrial Average from May of 2019 to May of 2020. And with the appraisal district valuing properties as of January 1st of 2020, they're in this big green box of collecting information from everybody. And so they have all the sales during a really healthy economy, things like that. And what happened was we're getting notices in this red box time period. COVID didn't really hit until March of this year, a little bit before March. And you see what happened to the stock market. We're kind of bouncing back right now, but there's still just a lot of economic angst out there. And dealing specifically with just Texas, you know, we've been spoiled. I don't know if spoiled is the right word because we have good policies, but we've had a really healthy economy for the past couple of years, or you know, for a long time now, actually more than a couple of years. And we're seeing a very different economy in Texas right now. We are seeing some indications that the residential real estate market is not being greatly impacted. And if Jim were on the webinar today, he would have shown you some graphs and some stats that are encouraging for what's going on in the residential real estate market. But looking at the economy as a whole, you know, our comptroller, Glenn Hager from Texas, is saying that we're not officially in a recession, but because the numbers are not officially in yet, but we should expect to go into a recession. They're expecting unemployment to rise into the low double digits. And, you know, I think we all personally know, or directly or maybe indirectly through some friends, of people who have lost a job, who've been furloughed, or maybe asked to reduce their wage, their income to still stay employed with a company. So there are real economic concerns that are out there right now. And this is a really unique situation we're in. And so these taxpayers are living through a lot of economic angst right now. And they just got their tax notices in. And in some areas, you saw big increases in value. And in other areas, you saw the value stay flat. But I think what's got people on mind is just paying a high property tax bill that's coming in October, or having it impact their mortgage, continue to impact their mortgage. So I'm going to kind of just go through some quick stats of what's going on in the area, because I know that as real estate agents, I'm going to still focus on North Texas, but you might have people in all different areas. I know that we're talking to mainly a Plano and maybe some Rockwall office today. So Collin County, I'll kind of cater my presentation more towards Collin County later. But in Tarrant County, we saw a 0% median change in value for residential property, but a positive 4% change in the appraised value. So the appraised value, that confuses a lot of people. They don't really know the difference between market value and appraised value. And when I say confuses a lot of people, I mean it confuses a ton of people. So if you're kind of scratching your head and you don't really quite understand that concept, don't worry about it, because there's a lot of people that don't understand that, and it's hard to explain. So I'm going to do my best right now to try to help out with that. The market value reflects what the appraisal district thinks that your property will sell for on January 1st. The appraised value, and this is for homestead properties that have a homestead exemption, it can only increase by a maximum of 10% every year. So a lot of people know, and there's different terminology for the appraised value depending on the appraisal district that you're associated with. Some call it the homestead cap value, some call it the assessed value, some call it the appraised value. We use the term appraised value because that's what exists in the Texas Property Tax Code to describe this. So if you have an appraised value, that keeps your tax bill from just going out of control for your homestead. That's essentially the function of the appraised value. So even though your market value can increase by 20% in a year, your appraised value will cap out at that 10% increase. And your taxes are actually based off of your appraised value, not your market value. So what we saw in Tarrant County was last year, they went crazy with market values. You saw some areas where market values were going up over 20%. So with them having 0% median change in their market values this year, what you're seeing this year is the appraised value is being pulled up by that market value that was set last year. So a lot of them are increasing at that maximum of 10% or 5% because the market value was so high last year that the appraised value is kind of playing catch up this year. Denton County saw a 1% change in value, but in Denton, it's kind of segmented. There were some areas that were hit more than others. Argyle, Carrollton, Lake Dallas, and Louisville, all those areas saw at least a 5% median change in residential value. Rockwall was hit pretty hard. They saw a median of 3.6% change in value. Collin is relatively flat this year. We saw relatively no increases across the board. So Collin was real aggressive last year, if you recall. I think they hit the median increase in value, or the average, I can't remember which stat it was about 10% increase in value. So this year, it's relatively flat. They didn't increase values. outside of just working with the appraisal district's values, there's another side of the equation for property tax, and that's the tax rates. I think that's going to be a big concern this year, and I think we need to pay more attention to that this year than we have in the past. Cities and ISDs are worried about their budgets. So you keep in mind that property tax is made up of a lot more than just residential real estate. There's sales tax. You know, if have these stay-at-home orders, they're way off on their sales tax collection revenues this year. There's the impact of retail. So people might be more weary of going out in public and quote unquote foot traffic areas because until we get a vaccine for COVID. And so they're worried about retail and just commercial properties in general that rely on, like we have and part of our company, Jim handles commercial, and he has a paintball complex, and essentially they've had to shut down because of big group gatherings. So just things like that. The commercial will see impact because of policies that are put in place because of 25%, 50% occupancy level restrictions that are being put out there, and then also just the sense that just the angst that people feel of going out in public for their own health until we get a vaccination, which might be some time off. So cities and ISDs are worried about budgets right now. I'm going to kind of skip over this slide because I want to focus more on the valuation, but because the cities and ISDs are worried about budgets, one lever that they could pull to help alleviate that pressure that they're feeling is to increase the tax rate. And so I bring that up because I think this year is especially important to pay attention to property tax. We have a lot of areas with increasing values. We could have increasing tax rates because of the budget constraints I was talking about. We do have real economic concerns that people are already feeling. And so I think what people are generally worried about is getting a higher tax bill or just maintaining the current, with maybe losing a job or being furloughed, or just the uncertainty that's out there of having to maintain an already high tax bill, or even getting opposed with an even higher tax bill. People are really, really worried about that this year. So I really think that this is going to be one of the most important years we've had in property tax since 2009, after the Great Recession began. This year is all over the board with property tax deadlines. Colin, the new deadline this year is going to be June 15th. So last year, as a good general rule, we could have said that May 15th is going to be the deadline to file a protest. But because of COVID, a lot of the appraisal districts were delayed in getting their notices out. So these are all brand new this year. So pay attention to this. And if you have any questions about this particular slide, you can go on our website, help.PropertyTax.io, and search for 2020 deadlines, and we'll have an article that has all these deadlines listed there. So Colin is June 15th, Dallas is June 15th, Denton is coming up this Friday, May 29th. Rockwall has already passed, that was May 15th. And Tarrant is coming up on Monday next week, and that's June 1st. So the most direct impact you have on your tax bill is protesting the appraisal district's value. I'm going to talk to you today about how to do that the right way. And we're very evidence-based in our approach at PropertyTax.io, and we encourage everyone else to be evidence-based as well. The biggest mistake I see people make, or one of the biggest mistakes I should say I see people make when they protest their value, is that they're so focused on the actual tax bill itself that they'll go to the appraisal district and talk about increasing taxes. I'm just here to tell you that I think that sets the conversation off on the wrong foot, because appraisal districts don't want to be burdened solely with taxes. They have a role to play in them, which is setting values. But the other side of the equation is local taxing jurisdictions that set tax rates. And I think you're seeing Governor Abbott kind of use his bully pulpit powers right now to tackle the local taxing jurisdictions and say that they have a responsibility to their citizens with tax rates this year. So just as an example, if the appraisal district increased their values by 5%, but a local taxing jurisdiction set a tax rate at 0%, well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what the taxes would be. The taxes would be $0. Now that's unrealistic because we do need revenues to provide services for our citizens, but it shows the power of the tax rate. And you're seeing Governor Abbott really push for local taxing jurisdictions to be aware of that this year and vote responsibly. But you as citizens that are not really directly involved with setting tax rates other than through electing people that you trust to make those decisions, the most direct impact you have is to actually file a protest with the appraisal district to control that other side of the equation, which is the value. And so when you go to the appraisal district, try to avoid the talk of taxes because they really want that to be more of a political conversation and more on the local taxing jurisdiction side of things, because they view their part of the appraisal district as having a job to do, which is set the value, which is more of an evidence-based approach. And so try to keep your language and your focus on the value when you're talking with the appraisal district. And I'm going to talk to you today about how to really approach that the best way. There's two sets of decision makers that I'm going to talk about. One of them is an appraisal district appraiser. So if you file an online protest and you submit evidence, that gets assigned to an appraisal district appraiser. They can look at your case. If you've submitted evidence, hopefully they will look at your evidence and they can decide to lower the value at that point. So they are a decision maker in this process. If you don't like the reduction that they offer, or if they just flat out say that we can't offer a reduction, then you can move on to a second set of decision makers called the Appraisal Review Board, or the ARB for short. And that's just a lot of people get nervous when we talk about the Appraisal Review Board. Again, I run it on my website, PropertyTax.io. We have a chat system, and a lot of people are confused about what the ARB, the Appraisal Review Board, really is. They think it's like that they have to go down to the county courthouse and it's this big to-do kind of thing. It's really not nearly as formal as all of that. The Appraisal Review Board, they're just citizens, tax-paying citizens of the counties that you are disputing your case in. So if you're in Collin County, they have to be a tax-paying citizen, meaning they have to own property in Collin County. And they don't work for the appraisal district. They're a completely separate entity from the appraisal district. They're independent, completely independent. They kind of make their own policies and decisions. Although in Collin County, I'll talk a little bit later about how there's one particular policy that they've adopted that the appraisal district has that I want you to be aware of. So don't worry about if you have to go to the Appraisal Review Board. As somebody who's presented thousands of cases in front of an ARB, I still get nervous when I walk into the room, just because that's my personality type. I like to do well and perform, and I know that there's a lot at stake for my clients when I present cases. But I usually settle into it, and I realize that these people are not here to hold value for the appraisal district. They're there to act as referees in the process. So at my website, PropertyTax.io, we're known for our instant and free analysis. You go to the website and you just type in your address, and we will analyze recent sales that are credible to use to value your property and tell you if we think that you can get a reduction based on recent sales. What's going on behind the scenes when you do that is we are mirroring how the appraisal district would view that information. So it's not like we're not just looking at price per square foot and spitting that back out you. We're making all these adjustments that the appraisal district would make. So we're making adjustments for a pool, adjustments for a lot that backs up to a greenbelt versus an interior lot. Size adjustments, a 2,000 square foot home versus a 2,300 square foot home, things like that. We're making all these adjustments that the appraisal district makes, and showing you how strong, if you were to protest your value, how strong that it would almost appear in their systems to offer a reduction. So we give you this reduction potential indicator. We give you a conservative and an optimistic tax savings range. And we tell you, we provide you a map so that you feel comfortable with the information that we're displaying. So we say, there's these green dots here. Those are comps that help you get a reduction. If you see any red dots, those are comps that would work against you to get a reduction. And blue dots kind of say, hey, it looks like it's supporting the current value that you've got. So in this particular case, you can see a lot of green dots in this pie diagram. You can see more green than blue, and there's no red. So this person has a very strong case for a reduction. And Jim, I can hear your audio in the background, so it does look like you were able to get it figured out. Is that right?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay, good.
Okay.
Well, I just went in and started without you. So I guess you can chime in whenever you want, but you're good to go with audio. I can hear you now.
That was definitely a good move.
Okay. So in over 10 years of working in property tax, I've learned that the appraisal districts have a huge technological advantage. Dallas touts how they developed a system, and they spent millions of dollars on the system. Other appraisal districts license software from companies that have spent millions and millions of dollars in development and employee programmers. They just have tremendous technological resources that are focused on producing values that the everyday homeowner or real estate agent, they don't have. And so when I first started out doing this, I was using just straight up MLS information. And again, this is not a knock on how anybody else values a property. It's not a knock on how a realtor is going to value a property. It's not a knock on how Jim, who was able to just join us, who's an appraiser, values a property. It's just they have their own unique world of valuing real estate, and there's data points that you don't even know about that they use in their systems. And so whenever I was first starting out, I would present information to the appraisal district, and then they would say, well, when I run this comp through our system and we make all these adjustments, the value actually indicates higher than what you're presenting. I got really frustrated with that. I graduated from Texas A&M. There's an online forum called TexAgs, and they're really active with property tax information. And this just kind of reflects what my experience was as well. This guy posted on there out of frustration. He said, a house with the same floor plan in my neighborhood had a total notice market value of $11,000 less, and he wanted to use that as a basis to get a reduction. But with all the adjustments, the adjusted notice value is almost equal to his value. So in other words, he went in there with this plan. I'm going to use this comp to get a reduction because it's the same floor plan as mine. It's he, in his mind, it was pretty much the same property as his. But the appraisal district saw it differently. They run it through their system, and they just kind of blew up his plan in a few clicks of a mouse. So that was really frustrating that you think you've got this good argument to go in there, and then you really don't know until they run it through their system how it's going to play out. And that was happening when I was first starting out. That happened to me time and time again, where I would go in there with this plan for a reduction, and I'd get really frustrated because I would work really hard on it, and then they would just run it through their system in just a few clicks, and it would totally change what was going on. What I thought was going to help me didn't help me. And now my plan was blown up, and I'm having to think on my feet on the spot, which is not ideal. What I wanted to have happen was to know what information was going to help and hurt me going in there so I could better prepare for a conversation with the district appraiser. And so that's why I developed PropertyTax.io. I wanted to level the playing field with the appraisal district, but more importantly, I wanted to make it very easy to use. There's a lot of technical aspects of what goes on behind the scenes with the software that we provide, but I wanted to make it accessible to everyday homeowners as well. So now in just a few clicks of a mouse, you can produce the evidence that you need that's compliant with the appraisal district system. So in other words, if we say a comp is going to help you, there is an extremely high likelihood that it is going to actually help you. I can't guarantee that it's going to help you because the appraisal districts do use proprietary software, and there's certain things that exist in that software that we don't get access to through open records requests. But I have, I can just tell you that we have really effectively reverse engineered their systems, and I don't have an actual stat about what comps adjust to how their system says it, but I can guarantee it's in the high 90%. So it is extremely effective, and you can feel very confident using this information to go in there that it's going to help you. This is just a sample of what our evidence looks like. This doesn't have to be a huge commercial for what I do at PropertyTax.io. We do have, so it's actually kind of funny. We had somebody from a different county that we don't support yet chat in the other day, and they wanted to get a copy of our evidence packet so that they could mirror how we present information themselves. So look at it this way. There's no great technology in producing a document. We make it super easy to put it together and put all the important information in place and organized for you. But if you just want to pop open a Microsoft Word document or something like that, you can easily create evidence. So just follow this template that we provide. Start off with an executive summary. I think it's very important that you state right off the bat what value you're asking for and why you're asking for that value. You don't need to get extremely detailed in this part of the report. Just say, here's where I'm coming from, essentially. The next page, I think, also helps set the tempo that provide a map of your property that's really zoomed out. So what that does is it shows people where you're located. They get an address and they might not know exactly where that address is or even a zip code. So especially if you're in the appraisal review board, just provide a map that's really zoomed out, and they'll recognize major roads and they'll kind of get a general sense of where you're located. What that is subtly doing is they're gaining credibility with your report because they're not relying on the appraisal district to tell them information about your property. You are telling them information about your property that they're finding of value, because I guarantee you there's a question in one of their minds about where is this property located. And if you start proactively answering questions that they have in your mind, that they have in their mind, you're gaining credibility with them. So something as simple as providing a map that is zoomed out so they can get an idea of where your property is. One thing that I think a lot of people miss, and this is kind of universal in all the appraisal districts, is there's line items called additional improvements. Those include things like the attached garage, covered porches, even pools, tennis courts, if the property has one, things like that. A lot of people miss that, and they can be way off in their assumptions about how a property is going to play out in the appraisal district system if they aren't considering that kind of information. So as an example, this property has about 14,000 in covered porch values. Again, we're in the appraisal district world here, okay? I would have never thought that covered porches would have $14,000 in value and would include them in a valuation report that I would be doing, but they do. And so if you're missing that kind of information, they're going to say, oh, well, you're missing the covered porch adjustment. Another another line item that's in the appraisal district's data that doesn't exist in MLS is a building quality rating. So in Collin County, they have like almost 30 building quality ratings. This one is coded an RF12. Why that's a big deal is in there are certain neighborhoods where you have, as an example, like an RV7 building quality rating. And then there's an RV7P, and then there's an RV7M, and then there's an RV8. And from the outside, you might think that these are all the same type of property. But really what the appraisal district is saying is we're distinguishing between the quality of construction between each one of those building quality ratings. And so if you go in there, let's just say you're an RV8, and you go in there with an RV7P that's a comp, they're going to make maybe a $25,000 adjustment on that property that you're not making. And so now your assumptions are off, and your plan is starting to kind of fall apart, again, just in a few clicks of the mouse. So we account for all of that. We know that ahead of time. To get outside of what I do and with PropertyTax.io, because really what we do is try to speak the language of the appraisal district. But to translate that into what you might interpret as building quality rating, you can look at the builder of the property. So in Collin County, you can go look up a property that you know has sold. And what's frustrating about Collin County is they don't provide the building quality ratings on their website. Other appraisal districts do provide that information, but Collin does not. So as a workaround, you can scroll down to the deed history, and you can view the builder of the property in that deed history. And as long as you're comparing properties that are the same builder, and you document that, you say that I'm looking at these properties that are the same builder, then I think that will set you apart from a lot of people that go in there. It shows a level of detail that you're looking at in your analysis that most people don't. And the building quality ratings really closely correlate with the builder of the property. So A Dries will probably be all the same building quality rating in a neighborhood, as an example, versus a David Weekley might be a different building quality rating. I'm a huge fan of using a lot of maps in the reports that we use, again, because if you're using comps to use the value to get down, the question that the appraisal review board or even a district appraiser is going to have is, how locationally similar is this property to your property? Even if they exist in the same neighborhood, just putting them on a map can show things like, oh, okay, these are on the same side of the street, or these both back up to a green belt, or these both back up to a busy street. And so it just adds a level of detail that I think is missing. So with what a lot of people present. So you can go into Google Maps and drop pins, and if you're using comps, or if you're using my software, PropertyTax.io, we provide the maps for you in the report automatically. Also provide a table that just that's really easy to scan about the big ticket line items that you would use to see how similar a property is to your property. So I'm talking about things like square footage, year built. We include a line item called effective year build in our, this is a report that's specific for Collin County. We include line item called effective year build, which that does not exist on their website either, but we get it through open records request. Effective year build is how the appraisal district distinguishes between the condition of different properties. So if a property had gone through an extensive kitchen remodel, for instance, and that required permits, and the appraisal district pulled those permits and they saw it was for a kitchen remodel, they're going to bump up that effective year build for that property to reflect that it's in better condition than other properties in that neighborhood. And so we make adjustments for that as well in our system, but we also list it out on this quick table to show how similar the comps are to your property. So I've kind of painted a picture right now of all the technology that the appraisal district uses, and you know, I've probably kind of made it seem like a really complex process. And to be honest, the world that I live in is pretty complex because we're focused on keeping it super tight and accurate with the appraisal district on basically providing a window into their systems, and that is a very complex process. At the same time, I want to communicate to you to don't worry about all of that, okay? Your biggest advantage is that you know more about your property than anybody else, okay? The appraisal district knows what's in the database about your property. You know the actual truth about your property. And I'm going to get into what that really means. And it's actually not just something I'm saying, it's an extremely effective strategy to combat the appraisal district's assumptions about the information that they're looking at. But here's a secret though that a lot of people don't know about, is this is what the appraisal district wants you to do, okay? They want you to tell them things about your property that they don't already know, because that lets them get out of their system to make a judgment call for you. So here's a headline from the Dallas Morning News a couple of years ago. It was written by Leona Allen, and Leona did not use our software, but we read about her experiences and used it as a workflow into our tool. The headline is, "Here's how I knocked $13,000 off my property tax appraisal in 30 minutes. The process was so easy that I'm vowing to protest every year." So here's what Leona did. She filed a protest online. She got a realtor friend to gather recent sales of comparable homes in her neighborhood. And then this is a step that I think set her apart from a lot of people. She got photos of recent sales from Zillow and Trulia. And in her hearing with the district appraiser, they lowered the value to the average of the recent sales that she brought in. I think the photos added value to her process because it shows a level of detail that she was looking at that most people don't consider, and really the appraisal district doesn't do automatically in their process. You know what's really easy to use in a database is square footage, land values that they have assigned for the property, year built. Those are all data points that are very database friendly. What's not database friendly is photos. So that's how you get outside of the database. If you're kind of living in the world of the appraisal district's database, then you're going to have to play by their rules with how properties adjust in their system. The way that you get out of that environment is by providing photos of a property. So this is how we've baked that into our workflow. This is on my website, PropertyTax.io. This is what's in our silver package, where we are helping you produce information to combat the market value of your property that the appraisal district thinks it would sell for. So you can use photos to show things like, this comp's kitchen is nicer than my kitchen. And so you can tag the photo of the comp. You can upload a photo of your kitchen. And so what you're doing here is a side-by-side comparison of your kitchen versus the comp's kitchen to show the distinguishing, but how they're different. And you say, it would take me $25,000 to upgrade my kitchen to look like this comp's kitchen. And now what you've done is right here, the appraisal district was assuming that there was no distinguishing between the condition of the comp that sold and your property. And what you're saying is, I disagree with that assumption that the appraisal district is making, because look at the two pictures of the kitchen. Look at my kitchen versus the comp's kitchen, and you can tell that there's a difference between the two. And I'm saying that accounts for $25,000. So here's how this looks in the report that we present. And again, if you're kind of going through Leona's process, you can get photos pop up in a Microsoft Word document and just put the photos side by side. I think it's important to compare your property to the comps instead of just including photos of just the comps photos, because you really need that side by side comparison to gain the real power of the argument that I'm talking about making. And so just present it in a side by side type view, and just state why you disagree with the appraisal district's assumptions, and you're using photos to do that. What is powerful about the photos is the appraisal district stares at their screen all day. The ARB panel members stare at computer screens all day. They look at tables and kind of spreadsheet type looking information, and that's pretty boring to look at, and that gets old and mundane, and it gets super easy to trust. If you're an ARB panel member, it gets super easy to trust a format that you've been seeing, day after day after day. You trust how the information is being presented by the appraisal district. So I encourage you to use photos, because what that does is shifts focus away from the appraisal district system and onto the information that you have brought to the table. So you're controlling the narrative more by providing photos. They're focused on the information that you have brought to the table, and photos are engaging. And it's an old saying, but it's true that photos are worth 1,000 words. So PropertyTax.io coaches you to feel empowered with the information to help you succeed. We give you direct access to our experts in online chat or email. Here's an example of how we did that last year. Is that comp's pool only worth $4,000? It seems like I'm being valued too high based on some glitch in the appraisal district system. This is a true story about how one of our users used our software and our coaching to disagree with an assumption that the appraisal district was making about the value of a pool that was a comp that was being used against him to keep the value higher. So he was noticed at $448,000. PropertyTax.io says that I should reduce my value to $425,000. And when I file a protest, I request the appraisal district's evidence. The CAD emailed him an offer to reduce the value at $441,000 and provided 4 comps that they were using as evidence. So he went into our system and entered in the comps that the appraisal district provided, and it equaled 441, which mirrored the value that they were offering him. But he noticed that one of the comps had a pool, and he doesn't have a pool, so he's focusing in on the comps that have a pool a little bit closer. And he said, okay, they're valuing that pool at $12,000. So he went and got the photos of the pool and said that there's no way that that's a $12,000 pool. That's more like a $25,000 pool. So he includes that photo and makes his own adjustment to account for that. So notice how that 441 value is dropping. Now it's at 438. He sees another comp that had a pool as well. And so he's finding the photo of that pool. And this one they had valued at $4,000. And so he's like saying, again, there's no way that that's a $4,000 pool. That's a ridiculous value to assign for that. And so he's making his own adjustment again for that. So the number continues to drop. Now he's at 433. But since he notices that the pools are an issue and he doesn't have a pool, what if he just removed the two comps that had a pool from the equation? And now he gets to a value at 431. So using the appraisal district's own evidence and adding photos showing that the pools were worth way more, the ARB panel members reduced his value to 430. So again, that's the power of using photos and common sense arguments to get outside of the appraisal district's system. The key takeaway from this is request the appraisal district's evidence ahead of time, okay? There's a law that says that they have to provide you that evidence 14 days prior to your hearing. So we recommend that as soon as you file a protest, that you request the appraisal district's evidence. If you're in Collin County, you can request the appraisal district's evidence when you file an online protest by checking a box during that part of the process. So when you request their evidence, they cannot alter that evidence once they send it to you. So if they learn something new about your property, or they changed their mind about a comp that they were using or something, they cannot alter that information so they essentially, what you're asking them to do is show you their cards. And you have 14 days from the time that they give that to you until your ARB hearing. So this homeowner had requested their evidence, and he was able to kind of take it and use our software and our coaching to kind of discredit their evidence a little bit by saying that the pool adjustments are out of whack. And he provided photos for that. So he had a good strategy going in there into the ARB hearing. And the ARB saw it the same way that he did. So this is what he chatted in after the ARB hearing. We have an online chat system, and he was excited about the reduction. So this is what he sent us, that they reduced the value to 430. He said the tip about the pool values made all the difference. And the chair actually thanked him for a concise presentation. I think that's important because to keep your information on point and concise, because what happens is a lot of people go into the ARB hearings and they have no plan really. They're just showing up and they're seeing the information that's going to be used against them from the appraisal district for the very first time in the ARB hearing. And they're kind of scrambling to kind of figure out what's being thrown at them. And it's really hard to think on your feet in that situation. I have the ability to do that because I do this for a living and I've done it for years and years and years. And so I can think on my feet more, at a much higher level than the average homeowner can, because I understand their systems also, and I know where to look for things. But the average homeowner, I'm telling you, if you don't have a plan going into the ARB hearing and the appraisal district wants to hold a certain value and you have nothing really to bring to the table, or you're not focused on the arguments you want to make, there's a really good chance you're going to lose that ARB hearing. So requesting the evidence ahead of time is a key part of this that helps you understand what's going to be used against you in the ARB hearing. To put context around this, that the owner, he said that the owners were on a 07 losing streak before his discussion. So in other words, the ARB was not just rubber stamping reductions for people. And he said without you and the report that he couldn't have done it. And I like that because it's what our product is software and coaching. And I think you saw that come to fruition in this particular case study, where we told him where to look and how to beat up the evidence, and he was very successful with it. This year is going to be very different than any other year with property tax. It's going to be the year of the remote appeal. That introduces some challenges to the process, but I think the way that you can best navigate the environment this year is by submitting really good evidence when you file your protest online. So what a lot of people do is they file a protest just to get the protest filed before the deadline, and then they worry about gathering their evidence later. Well, the district appraisers this year are trying to work cases as fast as they can. And so when you file a protest and it gets into their system, they're going to start going to work on that protest because they're trying to keep people from going to an ARB hearing. So if you don't submit your information with the protest, they're not going to have your say so and why you think the value should be reduced. They're just going to kind of come up with it in their own systems. So Also, you won't have the benefit of being able to go in for an in-person conversation to talk about the case with a district appraiser. So that shifts more of the work you have to do into providing a good packet of information. So one of the key, just a real simple thing you can do in your reports that you submit is just number the pages. So if you're on the phone with the district appraiser, or maybe you're in a teleconference ARB hearing, you can say things like turn to page 5 of my report. And that's a real easy way for you all to get on the same page.
So Glenn, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Going back to requesting the evidence, it seems like that's essentially going into a football game, let's say, and the opponent's playbook is sitting right there, and all you got to do is pick it up. I mean, once you get that, and it's legal, it's not like Bill Belichick. So once
Right.
you get their evidence, I mean, you know exactly where they're going. It's like going into a baseball game, maybe, and knowing what the next 4 pitches are. They can't change it.
Right.
So, and I also want to ask you about something else. Could you talk about the district appraiser and how you work, how that person actually can, believe it or not, help your case at the IRB sometimes?
I find that
In other words, are they your opponent?
Yeah.
Should you speak to them? Should you ignore them? You know, how?
First of all, I would go in there with the understanding that the district appraisers are people that are just like you and I, that are trying to do a job. And that I don't think that they're on this notion of we have to hold, quote unquote, hold value as high as possible. I have had certain experiences where I felt that way, but I know, and I think it's just like any major organization, whether it be a government agency or just a big company, you're going to have experiences that are not ideal when you get into big systems. But don't let that tarnish the overall experience that you're going to have. I have a lot of experience working with a lot of different people at the appraisal districts, and I can tell you that an overwhelming majority of the time, I have a good experience working with the district appraisers. I think they're there to help you. What we're talking about today is really taking an empathetic approach to how they view the protest, which is, help me do my job better. Help me by submitting good information and evidence. Tell me things that I don't know about your property, or just help me make my job easier, essentially. And that's the approach that we take at PropertyTax.io, is help make the district appraiser's job easier by providing them good information to help lower the value. So in an ARB hearing especially, I think that the district appraisers have baked in credibility that you don't have, just because of familiarity. Like, the ARB works with them all day for multiple days. They know them. Maybe they have little conversations about their kids. And so there's a level of, I don't want to call it friendship, but just they know them and they don't know you at all. And so they're going to inherently trust the appraisal district more than they trust you. I think how you bridge that is by doing what our case study did earlier, which is be extremely focused and understanding of the good information that's going to help you get a reduction. But talk with the appraisal district as if they can help you lower the value in the ARB. Respect the position that they're coming from. And a lot of times we see that the ARB will, if the appraisal district offers to lower the value, the ARB will just rule with that value. And so it's important to help to view them as somebody that you can use to help you get the value lowered at the ARB, not necessarily as somebody that you have to beat up on at the ARB hearing. Because I think if you take that tact, if you're really combative and you act like they're the bad guy, I think that adds a level of emotions to the hearing that don't help you at all. I think if you are more logical with your arguments and respectful, then I think that carries a lot. I think that's a lot better strategy.
Okay. I had one more question. I wanted to go back. Can we go back to Leona for a minute? She got $13,000 off of her tax bill, or off of her assessed value. And she just used pictures basically and talked about her house. Because we have a chat in, a question and it kind of addresses this too. What does that $13,000 reduction save her in property taxes?
That's about $300 in property tax. But
Okay.
one thing to keep in mind though is that it's not incumbent upon the appraisal district. It's not required that they reappraise every year. So in my neighborhood, for instance, one year they just kept the values the same. You're seeing in Collin County this year that there's relatively minor increases across the board to no increases in certain areas. And so that $300 could translate really into $600
Okay.
if you get 2 years of benefit from it. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it could happen.
Well, even if it didn't, I mean, if what she said is right, if it all this took was 30 minutes, to spend 30 minutes of her time and get $300 savings is not a bad deal.
Right.
So we have a chat in. Somebody said, you know, if I can only get a reduction of $2,000, is that worth it? So that $2,000, well, the tax rate's 2.5% roughly. So does that save her about $50? Is that?
Yeah. I mean,
So that's from Sally. You know, that's probably, Glenn, go ahead. I'll let you answer it because I know there's different ways to look at this.
well, okay. First, I would say it's not that hard to file an online protest. And well, first of all, it went up by $2,000 from last year. So what's the evidence you can produce to get a value reduction? It's maybe you can go lower than last year's value. So maybe the reduction that's on the table is more than $2,000. Just because the value went up by $2,000 doesn't mean you can't get a reduction of $10,000. It really is based on the sales that you're looking at and the information. So and really, I mean, we tell people that even if they have a $0 increase from last year, that it's still worth it to look into it, because you never know what new information is on the table this year that wasn't there last year. So again, that's why we offer the instant free analysis at PropertyTax.io, is to help you make that decision very quickly if it's worth pursuing a reduction, no matter the case. We have people that even have a slight decrease in value that we're still seeing have a good opportunity for a reduction, just because the sales are there. They're working for them to get a reduction. Okay. So there's going to be no in-person. I've kind of covered this already. Just to reiterate, I think being organized with your information is super important. Our evidence is very easy to produce. It takes about a minute for you, once you sign up, to get a report that you can submit. If you're not going to use our website to do that, that's fine. I would just encourage you to do a little bit more work on the front end and be organized with that information, because it used to be with in-person hearing, in-person meeting, you could file the protest and gather your evidence and kind of throw it into a manila folder. You'd go down to the appraisal district and you'd say, I want to discuss this information, and this information, and you kind of glue it all together with your conversation that you have with them. Well, you're not going to be able to have a conversation like that on a desk. So it's going to be done remotely, which means I think the more organized you are with your information, the easier it's going to be to discuss it remotely with somebody. Again, I just say little simple things like numbering your pages, I think would help. Also, along that theme, just be sure and provide an executive summary. Here's what I'm asking for, and here's why I'm asking for it. This is where I'm coming from. This is why I disagree with my notice value. So they can quickly understand the kind of information that you're going to discuss. It's really not that hard to do your homework, and especially with my website, it's super easy to do your homework, and it makes a decision maker's job a lot easier. So again, try to empathize with the people that you're trying to win over. If it's a district appraiser, the better information you present, the more honed you are by saying things like, I'm using the same building quality rating, or I'm using the same builder as comps. They immediately know, okay, this person's not wasting my time and they've done their homework more. That same thing goes with the appraisal review board. And I go back to our case study with the guy that was disagreeing with the pool values. That guy did his homework. With our website, it was very easy to do that homework. And you saw how successful the ARB was, how successful he was at the ARB with that. The biggest reward that we have is when we help someone who's never filed a protest get in the game. If you have filed a protest before, I encourage you to spread the word and tell other people maybe post about it on nextdoor.com or go on your Facebook neighborhood page and discuss your experiences, because there's a lot of people that aren't engaged in this process, and we need more people to be involved in it. And I think when they hear of people that have been there, done that, that encourages them that it's more normal to do this. It's not, I don't have to be scared of this process, and it's really not that big of a deal. We offer a lot of free resources. Help.PropertyTax.io is our help center, and you can search that for all kinds of topics that are not even related to protesting your property tax value. So we covered things like homestead. So how to qualify for a homestead, the document that you would use to submit that, what happens if you're filing a homestead beyond the deadline, things like that. We cover topics like that there, a wide range of topics. And then we also launched PropertyTaxUniversity.com this year, which is an online learning course that's completely free. If you're kind of new to the game, I would suggest starting with understanding your value. And if you're experienced in the process and you kind of want to learn how we approach evidence with the process, then look at evidence in the appeal. Go to that course as well. We also cover things like in a course called exemptions. So if you're a realtor out there, I would encourage exemptions, because there's a lot of topics around exemptions that occur when a transaction happens. So things like if my clients are over 65, what will happen with their over 65 tax ceiling transfer? What's going to happen to the homestead cap the year after the purchase? Things like that. And that's all I've got for my my presentation. I see that we have some questions.
Glenn, if you want to take a break and look at some of those questions, I'll go ahead and address a couple of the easy ones and leave the hard ones for you. Stanley wants to know if our system assumes that a property is a homestead. No, it doesn't. Matter of fact, when you go in, and the system will ask you some questions if it is a homestead, if it's over 65 and that sort of thing. So it does take that into account. And does it work with investment properties and land? It works with single family properties. So if you're talking about a rent house, Sally, yes, it would work great on a rent house. And we actually did a class with Lifestyles Unlimited, which is real estate investors. And I'll tell you what, those guys, it's wired in them. They protest each and every year. It does not work on land. That was the other question. And right now we don't have it set up to include condos or duplexes, but any kind of single family house. Glenn, do you want me to address that 300 square foot issue, or have you looked at that already?
Yeah, so it said it's 6% more. That's substantial. If you have an appraisal or some other third party that you can, it's actually more than what the appraisal. So you probably don't want to bring that up to their attention then.
Yeah, if you don't mind, let me address it. I think I may have a little more insight than you do, because I work in a real estate office on that one. When especially in Collin, when they see the MLS square footage greater than what they have, it's not unusual for them to make a request to come out and measure the property. And that's up to you. You don't have to let them come out there. And so if you don't let them come out there, I would say they probably are not going to change it, because they don't have a source for that really. What they really want is a floor plan. Outside of Collin County, Glenn, you can address this, but I don't think Dallas County is going to be worried about something like that, unless it's just really off big time.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yes. I was reading another question that's kind of related to, Sally had a question about COVID hitting until March of 2020. And can we use information that happened in March to get the value down that's of January 1st? And then Jalen asked a question about what dates do you recommend pulling comparable homes from? I think these two questions are related. If it's in Collin County has, and this is both true with the appraisal district and at the appraisal review board, that they will not accept properties that have sold beyond January 31st of 2020. So they will just, if you have a property that sold in February, they'll just, and this is both true at the appraisal district and at the ARB, they will just not consider that information. That's a policy. That's a hard date that they've set. We can disagree with that all we want. The fact of the matter is that it just has no success to try to use a sale that happened in February or March. So that's really specific to just Collin County. If it's in a different county like Denton or Dallas or Tarrant, they don't really have hard policies or hard deadlines to cut off you using sales. Like last year personally, when I was in negotiations with the appraisal district down in Dallas, they were using sales that occurred in May of 2019. So this was last year. So May against me. So I say if you're not in Collin County, try to use properties. You're really not limited with that January 31st cutoff date. I think in general, you're safe if you go up to April. You might start getting pushback if you use May sales. But again, in Collin County, they just will not. And this is, again, it's at the ARB and the appraisal district. You cannot go beyond January 31st for that. And I just emphasize Collin County because I know we're talking to a Plano office, and that's probably going to be most of your experience is dealing with Collin.
Bob, feel free to chime in if there's anything we haven't covered that we should.
I did notice a question from Shalina about, do we send this to our clients and let them do it, or we do it for them?
Yeah, I could address that, and I'll talk about it in a minute. I know that we're having some issues with our site right now, and Glenn's probably ready to get off as soon as we'll let go of him, so he can fix that.
We just emailed to Denton County, and I think our system hasn't scaled up automatically yet. Denton has their deadline on Friday, and we just sent out a reminder email to everybody, I think 10 minutes ago, and they just flooded our site. So our system is set for auto scaling, but it takes a while to adjust to that. So it's still going through that process. So yeah.
Healthcare.gov type issues, I guess.
Better than
so
that. Come on.
To answer your question, Bob, we do have a partner program, and I think many of you in the Plano office are partners with us. I haven't checked lately, but I know we started the year out with a couple of hundred partners, and I'm sure it's way more than that now. So a partner, you sign up with us, it's free, and the website is partner.propertytax.io. And really, this is a great marketing program for you guys. It's really one of the managers told me, he said, Jim, this is marketing at its best. It's free and it's useful. And I know that all of you guys and Keller Williams are participating with webinars. I've seen Gary Keller on them, and I know there's a big bowl push, a national bowl class going on, and most of it centers on working your database, which is back to basics. And I heard a guy say the other day, he says, well, if you haven't called anyone in 5 years, what do you say to them? Well, this is a great opportunity. You reach out to them and say, look, I haven't talked in a while, but something came across my desk I think you might be interested in. It's a really cool website. It's PropertyTax.io, and you just log in and put your address in. You get an instant free analysis, and they give you an idea of whether or not you have a good chance to get a reduction or not. The system pretty well walks you through it. I would say about half the properties that I've tested this year, including all 4 of my properties, unfortunately, come back with a reading that says, we don't really recommend you buy a report this year, Jim, because we don't really have any data to help you. Now, I can get around that if I have condition issues with my house, foundation issues, roofing issues, that sort of thing, which I don't. But the system, it's designed we don't want to sell you a report if we're not going to be if you're not going to be successful with it. For one thing, we don't want to waste your time. And another thing, we guarantee the product. If we recommend you make a purchase and you don't get a reduction after going to the board, you send us your ARB order and you get a full refund on it. And I will tell you, Glenn knows the exact numbers, but we don't issue too many refunds. It just doesn't happen that often. So back to your question, Bob, you don't do this yourself. You give it out to their clients. And by partnering with us, if you get a promo code, a unique promo code, and a unique link, and if you'll share that to your group, that gets them $10 off thanks to you when they go to checkout. So that's pretty cool. And we've had a lot of feedback from our partners that use that it's a great way to to stay in touch with their clients. Does that address that question, or?
I think so, unless Shalina has a follow-up there. But yeah, that's helpful. And I do see this as a great benefit that we can send this out to our database. And if nothing else, we've made another contact and done something of value to them. And one of the big things that we're doing with all this COVID-19 when we make our contacts is we're doing it from the basis of we want to be a resource. We care and we're trying to help them out. It's just not, business, money. And we come from that value proposition. I think this is a great addition to our value proposition. So I think it makes good sense.
Hey, Bob, just to piggyback on that, the website is not designed to convert every visitor to a revenue generating user. It's really to provide good information for people. That's our marketing strategy is providing good information for free and customer service. And so if we tell you, hey, we've looked at it and we don't recommend a purchase, we're trying to take an honest approach at it instead of just throwing you bad information and wasting your time essentially at the appraisal district. Another thing is that we do a lot of online chat with people that don't make a purchase or even register. They just have questions that they want answered that are property tax related. And so we do that as well. That's our marketing strategy, is to be a resource for people. So I think it exactly correlates with what you were saying, is that it's not about money. We think that being a great resource for people they're going to spread the word about us that way. And so that's the approach we take to people that come to the website.
Glenn, is my screen shared there on the partner page? Okay.
Yes.
So to the agents out there, and I know we've invited some people to the webinar outside of Keller Williams, just some customers, so they can ignore this part. This is for the agents. When you sign up as a partner for PropertyTax.io, you go to a tab here called Design Your Card, and all this takes really 2 minutes. You upload your photo, and you'll see that up here, and then you type your message in there, what you want to say. So mine says, "Good luck on your property tax challenge, Jim." And here is my promo code right here, P348, and here is my link. So this is what this card right here is what the customer sees when they go to checkout. They get a $10 discount, and your picture pops up with your message. So how you promote this to your clients is you go to the email template tab up here at the top, and Glenn's written a pretty good email template right here, which you can use, or you can edit if you want to. This is pretty cool. This is my promo code right here. And when they log in using the link right here, can you see in the lower left-hand corner how that pops up and it has the 48 after it? That's my promo code. So if anybody that I send this to uses this link to go in, they automatically are registered as one of my people. And when they go to checkout, they're going to get that $10 discount. Same thing here. There's a social media template you can copy. And so there's a dashboard here that shows you how many people have visited, and that'll start to populate once you start using it. I don't use my partner code very often. I use other real estate agents typically, so I don't have any on mine yet. But anyway, that's how that works. I'll put the screen share back to you guys. And let's see, is there anything else, Bob, that you felt like we wanted to have covered? Or
no, I think I love what we talked about, and I think the agents, this is a tool they can make use of. I would encourage them. Now, we've got a lot more people in our office than we're able to participate today. So will this be recorded, or they can access this at a later point and get into the partner program and do whatever?
Yeah, we are recording it, and it'll be up on our YouTube channel, PropertyTax.io, and I'll get a link from Zoom, which I'll send to you, Bob, and you can send out to the agents. And of course, the agents, you can send that out to your customers if you want to. So that's kind of how that works.
Okay, and I will forward that to Angie, our MCA, who, as you know, has used you guys for the last 2 years and been very happy. And so she'll be able to get that out to the agents. So our whole office will have that information. And given the timelines we're dealing with, particularly for Collin County, you know, June 15th. But if you want to do anything in Denton County, I mean, that's Friday, so you're going to have to get right on it. But
Right.
I think it'd be good.
And that's a good, I'm glad you mentioned that. You, when you file your protest, you don't have to have your evidence at the same time.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, when we file our protest, we have portals with all the appraisal districts. We will file the protest up until, you know, midnight of the day of. We don't ever wait that long on purpose, but every now and then we have a straggler that comes in at the last minute. But we don't send any of our evidence in at that time. Now, Glenn, I think will tell you that it's best if you can, go ahead and send your evidence in if you have it ready. But if you're up to the last minute, which we recommend you don't wait to the last minute, because just like our website has problems from time to time, theirs do too. And Glenn can tell you many horror stories about us trying to get into Dallas's portal at 10 o'clock on the night to try a couple of last minute protests. And
Right.
And it's you know, it's down. It just happens. So the day before the deadline is the real deadline. That's always a good rule.
Okay,
Right.
and that's good. And one of the things I'd like to encourage our agents as they're looking at this and sending it out, you know, take a very positive approach. There are no guarantees here. This is just a tool. This is a resource, and you're having a good contact with them. And if they want to make use of this and protest, that's great. And this helps them in a very user-friendly way to do that and to get into the system. But whether or not they take advantage of it and do it, you've got a great contact you've just made with a database. You can follow up on that. There are no guarantees. And I noticed Tommy Thompson talked about he's got a neighbor that's used it and nothing happened kind of thing. That will happen. You know, that's just how that is. And that's okay. You know, you're not any worse off than if you'd done nothing at all. Be my thought. So take that positive approach and, you know, as a resource, and let's move forward.
Okay. I've got the homepage up there, and Glenn, unless you tell me to, I won't go in and do this analysis because we are having troubles right now. But Glenn, is there any reason that an agent couldn't go in here and use this red button and check on a dozen properties for clients and just say, hey, you got a good chance or you don't have a good chance?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And we're still down, aren't we? So should I stay away from this? Or do you know?
I don't think that we are down. I'm monitoring the logs right now, and I see a lot of it running just fine. I think what happened was we emailed out to a database, and that was calling our database really heavily, and now that's over with, so it should be up.
All right. Well, we'll find out here real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just put my property in there, and you can see some stuff going on here. Basically, I already know the answer to this, so I'm cheating a little bit. You can see what my market value did. It just nudged up just a tiny bit. And so here's some information. We won't take time to go through all that. We click down here, view my analysis. And so we're still in the free part here. You can do this for your clients, by the way. So here's the news that I said is really not what I wanted to hear, but nevertheless, that's what it is this year. It says, I've got a moderate potential for reduction. Well, that's not very good. You know, it looks like basically what Glenn is telling me the system is that we don't really have much to help you, Jim. And so unless you've got issues with your house, you probably ought to sit this year out. So I'm going to go down here to the recommendations tab right here. And the system is recommending that I use the bronze package. And no one wants the bronze medal, of course. Our most popular package is the silver package, where you actually get a report. But the bronze package is $25. And basically what it says is, if you've got issues with your house regarding the condition, maybe you've got a house that hadn't been updated in 25 years, or you've got some foundation issues, roofing issues, structural issues, you can go that route. But we really don't have anything for you in terms of comps. So the system is not going to recommend that I make a purchase this year other than the bronze package, which is $25. And basically for $25, it gives you a good way to upload your photos and your reports and that sort of thing. So right down here, I can chat with an agent. I can open that chat box and you can see that myself and Glenn and Brian are there. I won't bother Brian with a question because I'm sure he's very busy now with everything that just went out in Denton. But that's a great resource right there if you just have a question. So at this point, all I've done is put my email in. I haven't paid a dime, and I've got all this information. So this is what's meant by the instant and free analysis. So that's kind of how that works. I'll go back to the homepage here. Here's the article from the Dallas Morning News a couple of years ago, the Watchdog Reporter. You can click on that and read the article that he wrote about Glenn. And let's see, what else do we have out here? Here's an interesting button right here, the full demo. Now that's about a 30-minute video, but it's going to basically tell you everything that you can do with the property. And so a lot of people don't do that. They can just hit the easy button, get an express report, and they're in and out of the system in about 5 minutes. But we have a lot of people, especially real estate agents, that go in and really fine tune the system, and they really do very well. I kind of skip down here. Here's some of the statistics. That's our coverage area right there, DFW. We're actually down in Harris County now. People that used our system in 2018 actually saved about $1 million in property taxes. And the success rating, by and large, about 80% of the customers that actually use our system get a reduction. So that's pretty good odds. And most people saved about $450. So they're kind of like that guy that Glenn used on the chat line. That's about what he saved probably. So that pretty well does what we were going to cover. Bob, if there's any more questions, or Glenn, if there's anything else, I'll take my screen share away here. And anything else to cover? If not, we'll probably sign it out.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't have anything else, and I think you've addressed the questions, and we're going to encourage our agents. You're going to send me the link and everything. We'll send it out to our agents because they can pull this up and still make use of it. And we appreciate, the 40+ people who were able to show up and work through it. And it's for y'all been able to do this in such short notice. Very, very appreciative. And I look forward to what happens and look forward to how we're going to all get through this and make it work. So thank you very much. I don't have anything else. I'm ready to sign off.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.